husband came home early and caught my affair on his PlayStation. Then this happened. Hey Reddit, I've always been a huge fan of this app, but I've never really posted before. I'm posting now because I honestly really need to vent and I don't have anywhere else to vent. My husband came home and found my affair partner on his PlayStation, and it has been crazy ever since. He has kicked me out and he's in the process of trying to ruin my life. My name is Rachel, and I am a 28-year-old woman. My husband's name is Vincent, and he is 29 years old, and we've been married for about 3 years at this point. We don't have any kids yet because we are hoping to get to our 30s before having kids. Now, my husband works as a real estate agent, and he is making a lot of money as a result of it. But that also means that he is very busy as he is always traveling for work. I, on the other hand, am a stay-at-home mom because that is what I prefer. With my husband making so much money, I honestly did not see any reason to work. Vincent and I met during our freshman year of college. We were both taking the same class and we quickly hit it off. He was charming and funny, and I was drawn to his outgoing personality. We started spending more and more time together, studying together, going to parties, and just enjoying each other's company. After a few weeks of getting to know each other, Vincent asked me out on our first date. I remember feeling so nervous and excited at the same time. We decided to go to a cozy little Italian restaurant off campus. Vincent was a perfect gentleman, holding the door open for me and pulling out my chair. We talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories. I felt like I had known him forever. After dinner, we went for a walk in the park, holding hands and talking about our hopes and dreams for the future. It was a magical night, and by the end of it, I knew that Vincent was someone special. From that day on, we were inseparable. We spent every moment we could together, and our love only grew stronger with each passing day. Vincent became my best friend, my confidant, and eventually my husband. I never imagined that our love story would take such a tragic turn, but I will always cherish the memories of that first date and the love we shared. Vincent and I had such a wonderful time on our first date that we couldn't wait to see each other again. For our second date, Vincent planned a surprise for me. He picked me up in his car and blindfolded me, saying he had a special surprise in store. When he finally took off the blindfold, we were at a beautiful beach at sunset. Vincent had set up a picnic with all my favorite foods, and we sat on the beach watching the sun go down and talking about everything and anything. After the picnic, we went for a romantic walk along the shore, the sound of the waves crashing against the sand creating the perfect backdrop for our budding romance. Vincent was so attentive and caring, making me feel like the luckiest girl in the world. As we walked, we talked about our families, our goals, and our future together. I felt like I could truly be myself around Vincent, and I knew that he felt the same way about me. That night, as Vincent dropped me off at my dorm, he kissed me goodnight, and I knew that I was falling in love with him. Our second date solidified what I already knew in my heart, that Vincent was the one for me. From that day on, we were a couple in every sense of the word, and our love only continued to grow stronger with each passing day. For our third date, Vincent wanted to do something fun and adventurous. He surprised me by taking me to an amusement park that was a few hours away from our college. I was thrilled at the idea, as I had always loved roller coasters and the thrill of amusement park rides. Vincent had planned everything out perfectly. We arrived early in the morning and spent the whole day going on rides, playing games, and eating way too much junk food. It was one of the happiest days of my life, and I could see how much effort Vincent had put into making sure I had a great time. One of the highlights of the day was when Vincent won a giant stuffed bear for me at one of the game booths. I was so touched by the gesture and felt like the luckiest girl in the world to have him by my side. As the day came to an end and the sun began to set, we sat on a bench overlooking the park, exhausted but happy. Vincent took my hand in his, and we watched as the lights of the park came on, illuminating the night sky. That night, as Vincent drove me back to college, I knew that I was falling more and more in love with him with each passing day. Vincent and I had been together for about a year, and our relationship was stronger than ever. We had talked about moving in together, and we both felt like it was the right next step for us. So after much planning and excitement, we finally found the perfect apartment and decided to take the plunge. Moving in together was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. We spent weeks packing up our things and preparing for the big day. When the day finally arrived, we were both filled with a mix of emotions, excitement for this new chapter in our lives, and a bit of apprehension about what the future held. But as soon as we started unpacking and settling into our new home, all of those worries melted away. Living together felt so natural and right, like we were always meant to be together. We decorated our apartment with our favorite things, creating a space that truly felt like home. Living with Vincent was everything I had hoped for and more. We cooked together, laughed together, and made so many wonderful memories. I loved waking up next to him every morning and falling asleep in his arms every night. Our relationship only grew stronger with each passing day, and I knew that I had found my soulmate in Vincent. Moving in together was one of the best decisions we ever made, and back then, I couldn't imagine my life without him by my side. Too bad I blew it up by cheating. I also still remember when Vincent proposed. It was a beautiful summer evening, and Vincent had suggested we go for a walk in the park near our apartment. As we strolled hand in hand, enjoying the warm breeze and the sound of birds chirping, I felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over me. We came to a picturesque spot in the park, overlooking a serene lake. Vincent stopped and turned to me, his eyes shining with love and excitement. He took both of my hands in his and began to speak, his words filled with emotion. He spoke for a while lull and then asked me to marry him. I was speechless, tears filling my eyes as I looked into Vincent's eyes. I could only nod, unable to find my voice, but my heart was overflowing with joy. Vincent took a small box out of his pocket and opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring. He slipped it onto my finger, and in that moment, I knew that I was the luckiest woman in the world. Our wedding day was a dream come true. We had planned every detail meticulously, and seeing it all come together was more beautiful than I could have imagined. I woke up early, filled with excitement and nerves. My bridesmaids were there to help me get ready, and as I slipped into my wedding dress, I felt like a princess. Vincent had always known how to make me feel special, and today was no exception. I was walked down the aisle by my father. I saw Vincent standing at the end, looking handsome and happy. The look on his face when he saw me was priceless, and I knew that I was about to marry the love of my life. The ceremony was perfect, filled with love, laughter, and happy tears. We exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for all eternity. I couldn't take my eyes off Vincent, and I knew that this was the happiest day of my life. After the ceremony, we had a beautiful reception with all our friends and family. The food was delicious, the music was perfect, and the dance floor was never empty. I felt so grateful to be surrounded by so much love and support. When the night came to an end, Vincent and I shared a quiet moment together, looking out at the stars. I knew that this was just the beginning of our journey together, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held for us. Our wedding day was everything I had ever dreamed of and more. Vincent was my rock, my partner, and my best friend, and I always thought that as long as we had each other, we could conquer anything life threw our way. I know you are probably wondering at this point, if our marriage had been going so well, then why in God's name did I cheat? Well, Vincent became too busy, always one trip after the other. He was making so much money but left little time for me. In fact, the main reason why we didn't have kids and wanted to wait for when we were in our 30s was because Vincent was so busy now. And he had promised me that by the time we got into our 30s, he would have made enough money and he would cut back on his hours. As Vincent's work trips became more frequent and his hours grew longer, I found myself feeling increasingly lonely. I missed him terribly, and I longed for the connection and intimacy we once shared. I tried to fill the void by throwing myself into hobbies and spending time with friends, but nothing seemed to ease the ache in my heart. That's when I reconnected with Jaden, an old flame from high school, through social media. Jaden and I had dated briefly in high school, but we were both young and immature, and our relationship had ended amicably. It was always a case of the right person at the wrong time. When Jaden reached out to me, he was going through a difficult time. He had recently gone through a divorce and was trying to rebuild his life. He told me that he had always regretted how things had ended between us and that he still had feelings for me. At first, our conversations were innocent, just catching up on old times and reminiscing about the past. But as time went on, our conversations became more frequent and more intimate. Jaden was a great listener, and he made me feel understood and valued in a way that Vincent hadn't in a long time. I knew it was wrong to be confiding in another man, especially one I had a history with, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. Jaden was like a lifeline in the midst of my loneliness, and I found myself drawn to him more and more. Vincent's family had never approved of me, and I could feel their disapproval every time we were together. I tried my best to win them over, but nothing I did seemed to be good enough. They always seemed to find fault with me, and I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in my own family. With my own family living out of state and me not having any close friends to confide in, I often felt isolated and alone. Vincent was always the more social one, and while he tried to include me in his social circle, I never quite felt like I belonged. So when Jaden, an old flame from high school, reached out to me, I didn't hesitate to meet up with him. We went for a simple coffee date, and I found myself opening up to him in a way I hadn't with anyone else. He was a good listener, and he seemed to understand me in a way that no one else did. As we continued to see each other, our relationship deepened, and I found myself falling for Jaden all over again. He made me feel special and desirable in a way that Vincent hadn't in a long time. He knew the right things to say and do to make me feel like a teenager again, full of hope and excitement for the future. One of the most memorable dates I had with Jaden was when he suggested we go to an escape room. I had never been to one before, and I was excited to try something new and exciting with him. As soon as we entered the escape room, we were immersed in a world of puzzles and clues. Jaden was so clever and quick thinking, and he helped me solve the puzzles with ease. We laughed and joked as we worked together to escape the room, and I found myself having more fun than I had in a long time. But amidst all the fun, there was a part of me that felt guilty. Jaden and I flirted a lot during the game, and while I knew it wasn't real cheating, it still felt wrong. I tried to push those feelings aside, telling myself that I was just having fun and that it didn't mean anything. Deep down, though, I knew that I was using Jaden as a way to escape my loneliness. Vincent's constant absence had left a void in my life, and Jaden was filling that void in ways I hadn't anticipated. He made me feel alive and desired, and for a brief moment I forgot about all the guilt and shame that came with our affair. As we finally escaped the room, victorious and exhilarated, I knew that my feelings for Jaden were becoming more than just a way to fill the emptiness in my life. But I pushed those thoughts aside, choosing to focus on the thrill of the game and the excitement of being with Jaden. What started as a simple coffee date with Jaden soon turned into something much more. Our friendship deepened with each passing day, and I found myself drawn to him in ways I couldn't explain. Jaden was a shoulder to lean on during my loneliest moments, and he made me feel understood and appreciated in a way that Vincent never had. We shared so many laughs and intimate conversations, and I found myself opening up to him in ways I never had with anyone else. As our friendship continued to grow, so did my feelings for Jaden. He was charming and attentive, and he knew exactly how to make me feel special. I knew that what we were doing was wrong, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. One day, things between us crossed a line and we ended up sharing a kiss. It was electric and passionate, and it stirred up feelings in me that I had long buried. From that moment on, our relationship changed, and we began an affair that consumed me in ways I never thought possible. I tried to justify our affair to myself, telling myself that I was just lonely and that it didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew that I was lying to myself. My feelings for Jaden were real, and they were only growing stronger with each passing day. Despite the guilt and shame I felt, I couldn't seem to stay away from Jaden. He had become my lifeline, my escape from the emptiness of my marriage. But I knew that what we were doing was wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was betraying Vincent in the worst possible way. I only just wished I had listened to my gut feeling and stayed away from Jaden. As my friendship with Jaden evolved into an affair, he started coming over to our house. He explained that he couldn't host me at his place because he now lived with his parents. Surprisingly, I didn't mind too much. With Vincent's frequent trips and long hours, I was often alone at home, and Jaden's visits provided a welcome distraction from the loneliness. Having Jaden in our house added an element of excitement and danger to our affair. We would spend hours talking, laughing, and indulging in our forbidden romance. Despite the guilt that gnawed at me, I couldn't deny the thrill of being with Jaden, of feeling desired and appreciated in a way that I hadn't in a long time. Vincent's absence created a void in our marriage, and Jaden filled that void in ways I couldn't explain. He made me feel alive and desired, and for a brief moment, I could forget about all the problems in my marriage. But deep down, I knew that what I was doing was wrong. I was betraying Vincent's trust, and I was putting our marriage at risk. Yet I couldn't seem to stop myself. My feelings for Jaden were too strong, and the pull towards him was too powerful to resist. As my affair with Jaden intensified, I found myself becoming more and more distant from Vincent. I was constantly glued to my phone, exchanging messages and calls with Jaden, even when Vincent was around. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. Vincent started to notice my behavior. He would try to engage me in conversation or suggest spending time together, but I was always preoccupied with my phone, lost in my own world with Jaden. I could see the hurt and confusion in Vincent's eyes, but I was too consumed by my affair to care. Our once vibrant relationship began to deteriorate. We would argue more often, and there was a growing distance between us that I couldn't ignore. Vincent tried to talk to me about what was going on, but I brushed him off, telling him I was just stressed with taking care of the house. The truth was, I was torn between my loyalty and love to Vincent and my growing feelings for Jaden. I knew that what I was doing was destroying my marriage, but I felt powerless to stop it. My guilt weighed heavily on me, but it wasn't enough to make me end things with Jaden. As Vincent's suspicions grew, so did my guilt. I knew that I was betraying his trust, but I was too caught up in my affair to see the damage I was causing. I was living a double life, and the strain of keeping up the facade was starting to take its toll. Despite Vincent's efforts to bridge the growing gap between us, I was too far gone. He went above and beyond to try to make me happy, planning surprise date nights and trying to spend more time with me. But no matter how hard he tried, I was always distracted, always thinking about Jaden. I could see the hurt in Vincent's eyes as he tried to connect with me, but I was too consumed by the thrill of my affair with Jaden to notice. Vincent was the love of my life, and I knew that he deserved better than what I was giving him. But I was addicted to the excitement and passion that Jaden brought into my life. I tried to convince myself that I still loved Vincent, and in a way I did. But it was a different kind of love, a love that was overshadowed by the thrill of my affair. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, but I was too selfish to stop. Vincent's love for me was unwavering, and he never stopped trying to make our marriage work. But I was too caught up in my own desires to see the damage I was causing. I was living a lie, and I knew that eventually it would all come crashing down around me. Funny enough, there were times when Vincent almost caught me in the act, but I was barely able to cover up. That should have been my sign to correct myself, but unfortunately I've realized I can be stubborn. The guilt and the fear of getting caught were starting to take their toll on me, but I was too deep into my affair to see a way out. I should have mentioned from the start that my husband Vincent was a big gamer. He loved his PlayStation and spent a lot of his free time gaming. It was his favorite hobby, and it was something that had always brought him joy. This becomes important info later. As my vulnerability started to show, Jaden must have sensed it. He knew how much I didn't want Vincent to find out about our affair, and he used that to his advantage. Jaden started asking me for money, playing on my fears and insecurities. At first, I was hesitant. I knew that it was wrong to give Jaden money, but he was persistent, and I was desperate to keep our affair a secret. I started giving him small amounts, telling myself that it was just to keep him quiet. But Jaden's demands grew more frequent and more substantial. He knew that I was afraid of Vincent finding out, and he used that fear to manipulate me. I felt trapped, caught between my desire to keep my affair a secret and my growing guilt over what I was doing. First a few dollar bills, then 100, then 1,000, and on he went. There was a point when the guilt and the fear of getting caught became too much to bear, and I considered coming clean to Vincent about my affair with Jaden. But I was scared, terrified even, of what would happen if I did. Jaden had nothing to lose, but I, on the other hand, had everything to lose. Jaden knew this, and this was his power move. I would lose everything, and he would escape unscathed. I knew Vincent well enough to know that he valued loyalty above all else. Cheating was a deal-breaker for him, and I knew that if he found out, he would drop me as fast as possible. The thought of losing him was unbearable, and I couldn't bring myself to risk our marriage. As much as I wanted to be honest with Vincent, I couldn't bring myself to do it. The fear of losing him outweighed the guilt of betraying him, and I chose to continue living a lie rather than face the consequences of my actions. I had been out of work for a while, and I was completely dependent on Vincent for financial support. If he were to find out about my affair with Jaden, I knew I would be getting the short end of the stick. The thought of being left with nothing terrified me, so I felt trapped into complying with Jaden's demands. Despite my growing discomfort with the situation, I felt like I had no other choice. I was in too deep, and I couldn't risk losing everything I had. So I continued to give Jaden money, hoping that it would be enough to keep him quiet and prevent Vincent from finding out about our affair. Well, on the day it all went to shit, it started as an absolutely normal day. My husband had been home last night and had left early this morning, so I wasn't expecting him at all until the next day or the day after that. That's just to show you how surprised I was when my husband showed up at home totally unannounced. I had invited Jaden over and I made mac and cheese for us. Jaden came over as usual and we became intimate. The passion between us was intense, and we lost ourselves in the moment. After our passionate encounter, LOL, we decided to go downstairs and eat the food. I was feeling on top of the world, the thrill of the affair adding to the excitement of the day. But little did I know, my world was about to come crashing down. As I was about to do a little bit of cleaning while Jaden settled in with my husband's PlayStation, my husband showed up. I didn't even notice until it was too late. My husband barged into the house, and the first thing he saw when he went upstairs was Jaden on his PlayStation. The look of shock and betrayal on his face was something I'll never forget. It was as if everything just froze. I froze from shock. Jaden froze like a deer caught in headlights. It was as if my husband saw red and broke the spell because he just launched at Jaden. Jaden tried to scurry away, but he was a little too late, and my husband landed a few solid punches. Jaden was still in shock, so he couldn't even retaliate. My husband seemed to come back to his senses after a moment, and he immediately got after Jaden and then kicked him out. He made it clear that his problem wasn't with Jaden, but with me for inviting Jaden to our house. I was still standing there in complete shock. The last thing I expected was my husband showing up. My husband was very angry. He started calling me every name under the sun and said that this was what I was doing while he was working hard to provide for us. He accused me of all but replacing him with Jaden and said that this was why I had been so distant lately. I started to cry because I knew that I had basically messed everything up. Vincent was completely devastated. His anger was crazy and he lashed out at me, cursing and blaming me for everything that had happened. It was as if he had reached his breaking point, and he finally decided to sit down, defeated. I, on the other hand, was still rooted to the spot, tears streaming down my face. I was honestly so sorry for what I had done. I never expected it to end like this, with my marriage hanging by a thread. Despite everything, I tried to go up to Vincent to console him, to explain myself, but it was obvious that he didn't want me anywhere near him. His pain and anger were too raw, too overwhelming for him to even look at me. I felt helpless, watching the man I loved crumble before my eyes, knowing that I was the cause of his pain. I wanted nothing more than to turn back time and undo my mistakes, but I knew that it was too late for that. All I could do was stand there, my heart breaking, as I realized that I had lost the most important person in my life. There was no way Vincent would ever forgive me. Vincent sat down for a few more seconds. The silence was deafening and awkward, before he got up, took his keys, and left the house. It was as if I snapped out of whatever had been keeping me transfixed to the spot the moment he walked out the door. I immediately tried calling and texting him. My fingers were shaking as I typed out message after message, telling him I was sorry, that there was nothing going on with Jaden, that he was just a friend who had come over to play games. I made all sorts of excuses, desperate to make him believe me, but he wasn't replying to my texts or my calls. I felt a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew that I had messed up big time, that my actions had irreparably damaged our marriage, but I couldn't give up. I kept calling and texting, hoping against hope that he would answer, that he would give me a chance to explain myself. But deep down, I guess I knew that it was too late. I, however, decided to give Vincent some time to cool down, hoping that once he had calmed down and came home, I would be able to talk to him and reach out to him. I had known Vincent for a very long time, and I loved him. I hoped that he still loved me enough to consider forgiving me. I went to bed, still no text messages from him, still no calls. The next day, however, he came home. He was very surprised to see me, and it was obvious on his face. He asked me what I was still doing here, and I was surprised. I basically asked him, "What do you mean, babe? This is our house." But he wasn't having it. He told me that he wanted me out of the house, and he wanted me out now. He told me I was crazy to think that I could stay here and pretend as if everything was fine after I had been cheating on him for so long, spending his money on the other guy, and bringing the guy to our house while he was out working to provide for us. I was shell-shocked. I didn't understand why he was saying this. I had said I was sorry. What more did he want to hear? He told me he didn't want anything from me, and he just wanted me to leave the house. He said he needed time to think, and there was no way he was going to leave the house for me, so I would have to leave for him. He told me that he was giving me 10 minutes to get the fuck out, or he would be throwing me out himself. I didn't even wait for him to start counting. I knew my husband had a temper, and even though he had never hit me before or had never really been angry at me before, there was no justification that he would not do it now, especially since I had cheated on him. I started packing my clothes, but of course I used a very popular tactic. I only packed my essentials, as I was hoping that he would somehow forgive me if my family put pressure on him. I packed up my essentials and immediately left without even telling him I was done packing. I called an Uber and left for a nearby hotel. Like I've said before, my family lives out of state, and I didn't really have many friends, plus the fact that my in-laws didn't really like me much, and they would hate me even more if they found out that I had cheated on my husband. So the only other option I had was a hotel. My husband messaged me asking me why I didn't pack all my stuff, but I told him there was no way I could pack all my stuff since I was staying at a hotel. I reminded him that I had no one to stay with, and that I would come pack my stuff when I had a more assured place to stay, or when I was leaving the state to go stay with my family. He seemed to accept that, and told me to give him a few days to think about what I had done. I immediately called my family to tell them what was going on, and to help me put pressure on my husband. They agreed. My parents scolded me for a bit, saying that cheating was not cool, but ultimately, I was family, so they had to help me. They started calling and texting my husband to forgive me. They dropped various Bible quotes and even told him that forgiving and forgetting is of the Lord. At one point, my husband got so annoyed that he even blocked them, and I guess that was the breaking point for him. Previously, I had been paying for the hotel room from our joint bank account. After my family's intervention, my husband withdrew almost all the money in our joint account, leaving me barely enough to last a day or two in the hotel. He then sent me a text to make sure I knew that he had done it on purpose. I knew I deserved that, but that didn't make it any less cruel. I started to panic because I knew that I was in trouble. I was running out of cash, and after that, I had no other source of income to turn to. I had been solely dependent on my husband for everything, and now I realized how wrong that was. I had to call up my family and beg them to send me some money for a plane ticket so I could just come over and stay with them. At this point, I didn't even want to bother my husband anymore. I just wanted to not be homeless. My family immediately responded and sent me money for a plane ticket. I booked the quickest flight, and the next day I had gone to meet my family. I made sure to update my husband on this, but he texted me back telling me that he genuinely didn't give a fuck, and that once the divorce papers were ready, he would let me know. He also said that I should probably find a day to come pick up my stuff because if they lasted a little too long, he would throw them out or donate them. I told him that I would come pick up my stuff once I came back to the States for the divorce because he had assured me that there was nothing I could do that would stop him from divorcing me. That night, we had a long talk about everything, and my husband told me that he just could not forgive me again. It was heartbreaking, but I guess I deserved it. He told me that he would have left some more money for me in the joint account, but he had only done it because my family had really stressed the fuck out of him. I apologized and told him I had just wanted him to forgive me. I told him about how lonely I had felt, and he said he understood me. He said he, however, wished I had talked to him about how I felt instead of cheating. We left the conversation on that note. He told me that he wouldn't throw away my stuff or donate them, but to come get them as soon as possible. I thanked him because there were numerous ways he could have made my life miserable, but he decided not to. Despite the pain and betrayal he must have felt, he chose not to retaliate in a harmful way. He could have dragged my name through the mud, destroyed my reputation, or made it difficult for me to move forward with my life, but he didn't. I was grateful for that, even though I knew I didn't deserve it. I can't help but wish things had turned out differently, but sometimes you just have to let things go. Thanks for listening. I hope nobody makes the kind of mistake I did.